Howdy, howdy. Okay, let's see. Testing mic. Oh, might have turned up a bit. There we go. Hey, everyone. Hope you all had a good weekend. It's a pretty nice day here in New York. The only thing is with daylight savings time and the approaching winter, the sun is now setting at the sun is setting right now, actually, so it's 4:30 here in New York, and yeah, it's gonna get dark pretty soon. Oh, thank you! Yay! Oh, we got our first subscriber. Thank you so much. Wow, really appreciate that. Yeah, I was gonna. It's one of my early slides here is gonna be talking about how we're now affiliate, and apparently VODs don't get deleted after a certain time anymore, so that's a plus. Wow, really appreciate that, guys. Nice. Cool. But yeah, it took some time to get affiliate, but thankfully Twitch gave it to us. So thank you guys for subscribing. Let me go ahead and kick this off. Yeah, I guess it's 4:31. We can go ahead and get this started. Cool, for sure. Yeah, I see a lot of familiar faces here. I see some new faces as well. Welcome, welcome. I'll just do the really quick spiel for anybody that's new. So this is specifically, this is our 5th session of a coding bootcamp that we just recently started. So even if you're new, no worries at all. It shouldn't be too bad to kind of catch up on stuff that we covered already. And just a good place to see that is, so first we have our homepage, which you can find with the !Notion command. So just drop that in the chat. So that command is going to give you the link to our Notion page. That's where you can find all the information, including links to Discord, slides, previous homework, videos, and all that. Also, we have a !Discord command if you do want to just hop in and join the Discord. And finally, if you do want to see the slides for today, go ahead and do !slides. Really appreciate all the subscriptions. Wow, I wasn't expecting to get this many off the bat, so thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Cool, so we can go ahead and just kick it off if everyone is good here. We do have, once again, a good amount to cover. This session will probably take like an hour 30-ish, so I'll keep an eye on the clock. And as always, we'll leave time afterwards for Q&A. Also, so for anybody that's new, the way we do these sessions is I usually kind of have a set of slides to go through. Some of the slides involve walking through like a demo or a project that we can all do together. As for questions, what we've kind of landed on is I'm going to start taking questions and answering relevant questions as we go through the slides. So don't hesitate. If you have a question on something that we're covering, just feel free to drop it in the chat. Of course, for any questions that maybe aren't relevant to the current slide, maybe they have to do with web development, but aren't really relevant to the exact slide, feel free to just drop them in the chat anyways. And then at the end, during the Q&A session, that's when I kind of go through all those like remaining questions and gather them up there. So let me go ahead. Yeah, thank you all for subscribing. Really appreciate that. Especially since I'm unemployed, so this is like actually my only income. So thank you. Cool. Let's go ahead and kick this off. So let me make sure my screen sharing is working. All right. Whoopsies. Got my slides ready. Cool. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. So this is, as I said, this is the 5th session of our Web Dev Bootcamp. And today we're going to be focusing on something called Tailwind. If you're new to HTML, CSS, new to the world of web development, you might not have heard of this word Tailwind. Even for a lot of web developers, some of them might not know what Tailwind is. But today we're going to dive into all of those details about what is Tailwind, why you should use it, even some reasons why you shouldn't use it, alternatives, and there's a rationale behind why I decided to add Tailwind to this course. It's not something that a lot of boot camps or courses teach, and I'm actually going to explain kind of why it's an advantage right now if you as a budding developer if you do learn Tailwind. So we'll dive into that today. All right. Also, let me make sure my chat is up here. Okay, cool. So as always, we like to start with the changelog. As some of you all might have seen already, we are now officially a Twitch affiliate, so that's awesome. If you'd like to support us, you can now be a subscriber. Right now, we don't have this set up yet, but we're going to roll this out where subscribers are going to get special badges in Twitch and Discord and early access to new stuff that we're cooking up here at Playground. And additionally, if you have Amazon Prime, you can also subscribe to us for free as part of your Prime subscription. So I included a link in the slides here if you do want to see more info about that. So feel free to check that out. And some of you also might have noticed, but our slideshow tool looks a little different than previous slides. This is mainly because our old tool called Tome, T-O-M-E. Tome is a new tool, and it doesn't have a lot of features built out yet. One of the features that was highly requested that Tome was missing was the ability to download slides. So it seems like a minor reason, but it's not a big issue to like switch. So I actually switched from Tome to this new tool called Pitch as our slideshow tool. So I highly recommend both of them, even for outside teaching, for school. Both of them are really great, but Pitch is just like a bigger company. It's been around longer, and you can download the slides. So yay. Sorry, Tome. No, I'll return one day, but for now, we need those the ability to download. All right. Yeah. Sorry, Tome. the Tome team is quite nice, and they're totally they're really understanding. But yeah, one day maybe we'll return. All right. Cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and move up. So really quick question here. Hi, will not finishing up last one affect this one? Honestly, not really. Last session was really just a project. So we kind of put together a basic HTML and CSS site, and I highly recommend still going through last week's session, but I won't say it's like a complete blocker to today if you haven't caught up on last session. It might be a little bit more tricky, and feel free to drop questions in the chat if there are things that you're missing, but overall it's not a hard blocker, so hopefully that makes sense. Oh, cool, we have someone from Melbourne. Yeah, for sure. Really appreciate the sub. Thank you so much. All right. So just a quick recap of last time, because I know we have some people that are new, some people that maybe haven't gotten a chance to catch up on last session. So basically last Thursday, we built a link in bio site with HTML and CSS, and then we deployed it using GitHub Desktop and GitHub Pages. And basically the takeaway we learned is that CSS is pretty hard, right? Like HTML, HTML is not easy, but HTML is a lot simpler in nature than CSS. And trust me, like when I was learning CSS and first starting out, it was really overwhelming, right? There are tons of properties out there for CSS that you feel like you have to memorize. But what we're going to talk about today is going to address a lot of those concerns. So right off the bat, I also just want to recap some stuff that we talked about from our very first session, which is that for this program, this bootcamp, we're really focused on the fundamentals here, and there are really only three main fundamentals that we're going to cover, which is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And we haven't got to JavaScript yet, but JavaScript is really by far the most important of those fundamentals if your goal is to become a front-end or back-end web developer. So, and then after that, CSS is the second most important to kind of deeply understand, and HTML is arguably the least important, just because you eventually come to recognize HTML and understand it as you build projects. So I just want to reiterate that there. But today we are focused on CSS, but we're going to dive into our first CSS framework. So let's talk about that. Before we get into that, let's take a look at the agenda for today. So our agenda looks something like this. First, we're going to be talking about Tailwind and what is Tailwind. It's might be a weird word, might be something you've never heard before. No worries. Then we're going to talk about why use Tailwind. Why did I even decide to include it in this course, especially since, as I mentioned earlier, no boot camps and no courses, to my knowledge, really cover Tailwind. And I'm also going to talk about why not use Tailwind, because for everything that I introduce, it's good to talk about the pros and the cons, right? Then we're going to talk about some alternatives to Tailwind, just so you know the lay of the land. And then we're going to get into more practical stuff. We're going to talk about how to actually integrate it into your websites. And then we're actually going to build something with Tailwind at the very end. It'll be very simple, but the mini project, and I encourage, if you do have a code editor or you're on your computer, if you can walk through it together with us, it would help. But obviously, since this is all recorded, you're not, that's not required at all. You're welcome to just do it on your own time. And then we're going to do the homework, or we're going to go over the homework, which will be somewhat similar to the project, but just a little more in depth. And then last 10 minutes, 15 minutes for Q&A. Cool. All right, so let's just start off with the most obvious question, which is, what is Tailwind? So on the Tailwind website, they're going to describe it something like this, which is a utility-first CSS framework for building modern websites. That's a lot of jargon. So I guess I just want to break that sentence down first. Don't worry about the utility-first part. The thing I want us to zoom in on is the CSS framework part. So a framework, and this is a word you're going to hear used a lot. It's a word that has many, many meanings, but the way we can think of it now, where we are in a journey, is that frameworks are basically just tools that help developers, so us, right? We're developers, build stuff faster, right? Very vague, very vague, but it's vague on purpose, right? I don't want us to get caught and too stuck up on the semantics. I think it's more useful for us to just understand how these tools help us. So basically, Tailwind is a tool that lets us build nice looking websites a lot faster, right? As you guys have kind of might have seen from doing the project from last week, you have to write a lot of CSS properties to make a site look nice, right? If you just use HTML, it doesn't look that great, but you need to know a lot of CSS to make the site look nice. Not only making it look nice, but making it look nice on mobile devices, all devices, stuff like that. So Tailwind is just a set of tools that will make your life easier, hopefully. In the beginning, it might be harder, right? That's how it is for a lot of these technologies. In the beginning, it might be more confusing, but once again, this is going to have a trust me thing, right? Trust me, as you continue working with Tailwind and as we progress through this bootcamp, it'll actually help you understand CSS really well. Basically, to a more concrete definition of what Tailwind does is it gives you a bunch of HTML classes that allows you to do any styling you want without even leaving your HTML file. So we're going to check out their landing page first, but let me address a really quick question. Is it a package we have to install in VS Code? So if you're asking about Tailwind, so Tailwind itself is not a package we're going to have to install in VS Code. That being said, I will share some tools that are built into VS Code that help us write Tailwind. So yes and no, I guess, is the short answer. But just let's go ahead and just look into the Tailwind CSS website really quick. Oh, my link's not opening. 1 second. I have to just open a new tab. Okay, so this is the Tailwind CSS website, right? It's just tailwindcss.com. I can go ahead and drop the link in chat really quick. Also, before I move any further, I just realized that my mouse capture isn't on, so let me turn it on really quick. All right. Okay, I hope that's on, I think. Where is it? I don't actually know if my mouse capture thing is on. Oh, okay. I'll figure it out in the later parts. Anyways, so this is the Tailwind CSS website. And, this is kind of the tagline we're talking about. It lets you build modern websites faster without leaving your HTML. So basically, it gives you pre-made classes. And I know we didn't talk about classes too much, but we're going to be diving into that a little bit more. It gives you a bunch of classes that you can combine to create any design you want. So what that looks like in action is... Oh, it is on. Actually, you know what? I think I see the problem. It's on a different screen. No worries. I'll shift that, but thanks for letting me know. So check out this example right here, right? It looks kind of complex, but if we dive into what this means, so let's maybe look at this p tag, right? Hopefully most of us are familiar with p tags here. P tag, just as a quick recap, is like a paragraph, right? It's like a paragraph of text. And C, we have Tailwind CSS is the only framework, yada, yada, yada. Same with this, right? This text right here is basically the P tag. And we have these classes on these P tags, right? Like text LG, font medium, right? These might not be super familiar, but basically these are like in Tailwind, text LG will give us large text, right? Font medium would give us like slightly bold text. So if we compare that to maybe like the text down here, like this staff engineer section, let's check this out here. This is the matching code, right, for the staff engineer. See maybe actually let's look at this text as a better example. So if you wanted to change text to be sky blue, for example, right, in CSS, you would have to select the item or select that div or whatever, and then write color sky blue, right? But for Tailwind, all you need to do is just add this class on where it says text-sky-500. So this is going to give a text color of sky blue. And 500 is simply like how dark the color is, right? So if we did sky 800, it would be a really dark blue. And if we did text sky 100, it would be a really light blue. And check this out also. Many of you might know this already, but your computer, I think especially for Macs, there's like a light mode and a dark mode, right? Some people have like dark mode on always. Some people have it so that, dark mode only comes off on a certain time. But writing styles for dark mode, right? If you have a site that is bright all the time, there's only a light mode, it might not look that great of a dark mode. But in dark mode, if you want to like customize the styles for a dark mode website, all you need to do is put dark in front of whatever, style you want to add. So this is basically saying that in dark mode, this text would be slightly lighter, right? Let me see if I can actually trigger dark mode. Oops, crap. Let me see, dark mode. Okay, so I just used my computer. I just used like my system dark mode, and as you can see, the color changed, right? I don't know if you guys noticed that, but like the whole website changed, and that's something that's like not super easy to do with just CSS, right? Once again, you don't. The point of this intro, you don't need to understand like the deep nuances. This is just to give you a really quick overview of like what exactly Tailwind is, right? It basically just gives you these classes that each of these classes corresponds to some CSS rules. So that's the basic idea here. So let me go back to light mode here. Okay, not much. I guess some other things to point out here is like, you will eventually have to memorize these Tailwind classes, but a lot of them are kind of like, I don't want to say intuitive, but somewhat more intuitive than CSS, right? Let's zoom in on this example right here. So here we have width 96, right? W being for width, 96 being like not necessarily like 96 pixels, but like relatively 96. BG white, right? Background white. So this is a background white color, right? So, following this logic, if I were to change this to like blue or black, it would change the background, right? Very quickly. Shadow, right? I don't know if you guys remember from last time, but writing shadows is a very difficult thing in CSS, right? Even I did not know how to do it like from memory, just because, probably because I use so much Tailwind, I forgot. But here, all you need to do to add a nice shadow is just write the word shadow. And rounded, right? Remember we had to do border radius in our last project to make the corners a little rounded? Well, now all you need to do is write rounded. So someone said in the chat, so you can use it if you're lazy and you don't want to make it index that CSS. Pretty much. That's pretty much like one of the big advantages of Tailwind. Like, I personally am not great at writing CSS, especially if you have like a big site, right? You just have to write so much of it. So yes, it helps in the sense that, basically a lot of your styling is going to be taken care in your HTML, right? So everything in one place is like a basic idea. I think a common theme you'll see in all the technologies I've chosen for this course is that I'm kind of a lazy person, and I just don't like to do hard things, and I choose a lot of tools that make it flexible but also make it somewhat easier. Okay, so someone said, can a class have a colon, or is the dark some kind of attribute hacked? Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the classes actually, you know what? I actually don't know the answer to that. I've never, I can only assume that colons are valid class names because Tailwind's using them, right? Like and they must be valid class names, but outside of Tailwind, I've never seen anybody like use a colon in that class. But yeah, I guess it should be valid HTML, I think. Okay, cool. I'm gonna hop back over to the other slides. So yeah, one other thing to know about Tailwind is that it's pretty young. It was launched in November 17th, 2017, sorry, which, in web development years, that's like not that long. I mean, it's been about 5-6 years. So it's young, but it's a rising star in the kind of CSS community. So with that, let's get into why use Tailwind. This first statement is I think it is statistically true, but I'm sure people would disagree. But in my experience, most developers that end up using and adopting Tailwind end up loving it. I think another great benefit of using Tailwind, and the reason why I've introduced it so early in this course, is because I actually think Tailwind is a great way to learn CSS while also creating nicer websites, right? It took me years to shallowly understand CSS. And once I picked up Tailwind for the first time, which was probably like 2 years ago, maybe less, I felt like just using Tailwind helped me understand CSS better. Even though I was just writing those CSS classes, you still have to look up what CSS the Tailwind class is applying, right? So I almost saw Tailwind as giving you like abbreviations for CSS classes, which just allows your brain to kind of memorize more CSS faster. Of course, this is opinion. These first 2 bullet points are arguably like more opinion, less fact. But I've heard similar stories from others that have adopted Tailwind as well. I think another reason to use Tailwind is that it's extremely flexible. You can learn it and adapt it to any design style you like very easily. So we're going to get more into that in a second. Tailwind's also pretty lightweight. It's not a super huge library, so it doesn't add a ton of bloat. So that's another good plus. And Tailwind is also very scalable. You don't need to worry about scalability right now. We're far too early for that. But in the future, if you decide to work on your own small side projects or create a company, it's a great choice because even, when you're a small company, it's beneficial. And it's arguably even more beneficial if you grow into a large company. But we're not going to talk too much about that today because that's a little bit beyond us, but basically it's a solid choice for whatever project you're building. I also think Tailwind has incredible documentation. So for anybody that's new to this word, documentation is basically just a guide, right? So it's like a guide to a language, a guide to a framework, guide to certain tools. In this case, Tailwind has amazing, we call documentation docs, right? Docs is another way to shorten that word. They have really, really well-written examples for every single Tailwind class. So, this will come in handy as you start to build your own Tailwind sites. You're going to get into the habit of going to the Tailwind CSS site, just looking at whatever you need, and it will give you a pretty good idea very quickly. So they have great documentation, which is really good for learning. They also have some great looking components. And for those that are new to the word components, we can think of components as building blocks of websites, right? So, if we maybe just use the Tailwind website as an example, like maybe we could think of this top bar right here. I don't know if you can see my mouse super well, but the very top header, right? There's this nav bar. This would be like a nav bar component, right? We could think of this whole section as like the header or hero component, right? Either of those words apply. Basically, components are just the building blocks of websites, right? So, a lot of websites follow this pattern. They have a, nav bar on the top, right? Where it's like the logo, a bunch of links, and then they have their, header or hero text after that. And then they have more sections. So basically just components are just bits and pieces of a website that are commonly used. And I don't know about you, but as I said earlier, I'm kind of lazy. So components are really nice for me because I don't want to have to write the same thing over and over again, right? I like using the components that just gives me the nav bar I need. and I can just go ahead and use it without having to write it from scratch. And yeah, so I included links to kind of two of my favorite component websites. We'll go over this more once we get into the project and the homework, but the links are here if you do want them. They're also in the Notion. And here on the right, I've included some just a quick headline from the State of CSS survey, which showed that Tailwind CSS won the most adopted technology. Basically, this means that Tailwind, even though it's young relatively, it's been adopted extremely fast, and every single year more and more people use Tailwind. So that's good for us developers, right? We want to use technologies that have that trend. When a technology we use starts to go down, it starts to become a little bit unsafe or less safe to learn, right? Because we don't know if they're going to be good jobs for it. We don't know if it's going to be maintained. There's a lot of reasons to use the technologies that are steadily on the rise. And then I want to also take our attention to this graph down here. So this blue line is the number of downloads for the CSS framework Bootstrap. I don't know how many people here are familiar with Bootstrap. If you're not, don't worry at all. We'll also talk about that in 1 to 2 slides. But basically, and Tailwind is the green one, right? So Tailwind is this one right here. What I want us to pay attention to is that, Bootstrap clearly is way more downloaded than Tailwind, right? It's still a significant amount more. It looks like just eyeballing 5 to 6 times more downloads of Bootstrap than Tailwind. But as we can see, Tailwind is still steadily climbing up, and Bootstrap is that climb isn't as quite steady, right? Actually, Bootstrap seems more stagnant, even though it has grown a little bit from pre-2020 to 2022. We see that the growth of Tailwind, the slope is a little bit steeper, right? Okay, so those are the reasons why we use Tailwind. And of course, I'm extremely biased because Tailwind is basically the main CSS framework that I use. But I have to recognize that a lot of people, including my girlfriend Jackie, they do not like Tailwind. And there are a couple of reasons why a lot of people don't like Tailwind. I think one reason, and the main reason, is that your HTML gets bloated pretty fast, right? We'll learn how to fix this once we get into the more advanced front-end stuff. So we do have a solution. But just for us right now with HTML, CSS, some of your code might look like this image on the right, right? Which is a little scary because it's what is going on here, right? It's kind of overwhelming. It's a lot of text. But that's kind of the trade-off, right? Because we're not writing all this CSS in a styles.css file or a CSS file, it's kind of all got to live in our HTML. So if you need a very custom looking site, you're going to have to accept that some of your code is going to be quite long. But once again, we have tools in VS Code and other editors that will make our lives slightly easier, but this is just a heads up of what the future might look for you. Once again, this is a temporary problem because we'll learn how to fix this once we get into the more advanced JavaScript frameworks. But for now, we'll have to deal with some of these messy looking sites. I think Tailwind is also much harder to learn than Bootstrap. So Bootstrap is the most popular, right? Bootstrap is the CSS framework that is chosen by most bootcamps and in classes and stuff. And it's probably because Bootstrap's a lot easier to adopt than Tailwind. There's also less free components than Bootstrap. Bootstrap, there's so many components for everything, forms, headers, app components, etc. And Tailwind has those. There's just not as many available, also because it's newer. That being said, I think learning Tailwind is much more rewarding in the long term. As Bootstrap, well, let's talk about Bootstrap really quick. So there are lots of alternatives to Tailwind, right? Tailwind is not the only CSS framework out there. Bootstrap, the one in that graph I was showing earlier, is the most popular still. And I think Bootstrap is totally, I think anyone here is totally capable of going in and learning Bootstrap on your own. And that's maybe why I didn't include it as a main module of this course. But I think the problem I have with Bootstrap, actually the problem I have with all three of these, is that once you use these components, your projects become a lot more less poppy, I guess, to put it nicely. Basically, if we look at the Bootstrap website, let's look at their examples really quick. So the thing about Bootstrap is that, and you'll start to recognize this as we go, is that a lot of websites out there look like this, right? A lot of websites have this Bootstrap basically, it gives you less flexibility, but also makes things easier, which is a common trade-off we see in web development. So you see a lot of websites that look like this. And I'm not trying to say these websites look bad, but for a lot of web developers, it's almost obvious once you go to a website, you can tell that it was made in Bootstrap. And I think bootcamps and bootcamp instructors underestimate how important it is to have something, have a visual design that pops, right? And we're mainly focused on JavaScript here. So styling and making things look beautiful isn't a focus. That being said, everything we learn is designed to help us, land a job faster. And I do think the visual element is a big thing, right? Basically, if I were to look at two portfolios, one portfolio that only used Bootstrap and one portfolio that used a more custom design and maybe used Tailwind, even though the projects might be the same, I'm going to be a little bit more biased towards the one that looks nicer, right? So I think that's basically my issue with Bootstrap is that, I think it's fine to learn, but I think once you start to study Bootstrap more, you see how many websites out there look like this, and it just makes, it for your projects, right? It doesn't hurt to make it look a little bit more unique. And I do think Tailwind has more of that look. Of course, this is probably going to not hold up if Tailwind does end up being more popular to Bootstrap. Well, then there's going to be the default Tailwind look, but at least Tailwind is a lot more flexible than Bootstrap. Yeah, someone said it's more generic. I think that's somewhat true, mainly because Bootstrap's just so popular, right? We all have seen websites, whether we're conscious or not, that look like this. So basically, my take on Bootstrap is similar to my take on these other two frameworks. Material Design is a Bootstrap competitor that's made by Google. And I think the main con of using Material Design, it's very similar to Bootstrap, right? It's easier to use, it's pretty flexible, there's a lot of components. The problem with Material Design is that all your apps, or all your websites you build end up looking like Google made it. And Google isn't a company that's necessarily known for their great design. Some might disagree with me. Hopefully we don't have any Google employees in the chat, but I hope you'll forgive me if I say that it's not you want your website to have its own style, right? Maybe not everyone wants to have their website that looks like Gmail or Google or whatever. So that's my take with Material. And then the last one we have is Ant Design. In the interest of time, I'm not going to click on their website, but Ant Design, similar issue I have with Ant Design to these other two, which is, it gives you a lot of components that you can quickly use to whip up a site. But if you're going for something that looks a little bit more polished, I would go for the slightly more flexible option, right? But that being said, I encourage you to play around with these three. I think with just the HTML, CSS background, you can pick up any of these three fairly quickly, but Tailwind's a little bit more complex. So that's why we're dedicating our talk to Tailwind. Okay, so now let's get into the concrete and basically just start playing around with Tailwind. So very first thing is we have to add Tailwind to our HTML. And the easiest way to do that is on the Tailwind website, in their documentation section, they have a part in the documentation called installation, right? Which is basically teaching you how to install Tailwind in your HTML. Basically, you want to go to their tab that says Play CDN, and you want to copy and paste their script tag and put it in the head of your HTML. So all the instructions are here, so don't worry about it. We're about to do it ourselves, but this is just kind of like a quick reference on where to find these instructions in case you forget after today. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this right now. Let's go ahead and do a very similar flow that we did last Thursday, which is we're going to create a GitHub repository, right, using GitHub Desktop. So basically a brand new folder. We're going to start from scratch. Let's create our HTML. Let's add Tailwind. And then let's just start messing around with it, right? First thing is just to mess around with it. And then after we mess around and get a little bit more comfortable, let's create a more polished website using components. Cool. So let's with that note, let's go ahead and dive right in. I'm gonna go ahead and see. So let's see, what's the best way to get this started? Oh, here's my mouse. That's weird. In full screen mode, it was hidden, but now it's back. Can you also see my keystrokes? Okay, you can see my keystrokes. Cool. So I'm gonna open GitHub Desktop first, and once again, if you're following along on computer, feel free to follow along. If for some reason you can't, don't worry. You can just check out the recording later. And do let me know if I'm going too fast. I think a helpful thing last time was kind of helping debug issues as they come up. But we also want to be mindful of time as well. So just a quick note there. Okay, so once you have GitHub Desktop open, let's go ahead and create a new repository. So I'm going to go into this top left corner here. I'm going to do add. And I'm going to do create a new repository. Also, if you don't have GitHub Desktop, if you're new and you don't, if you have at least a code editor, feel free to just create a folder on your computer. It's going to be the same thing here, but because the homework involves like publishing this website, that's why we're creating a GitHub repository. So just a quick note there. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing that we did Thursday, which is we're going to create a new repository for our project, and let's call this Tailwind intro, because this is just our our playground to mess around with Tailwind. You can leave the description blank. Make sure you choose the folder with the projects that you have. So in this case, I have a Bootcamp projects folder that contains all my Bootcamp projects, but you're welcome to choose whatever folder you want. And you can leave all this stuff blank. We're gonna get into Git a lot more later, so this stuff will be demystified a bit, but for now, you only need a name and you need to set the local path. Cool. I'm gonna go ahead and click Create Repository, and we should see we have our new repository. So I'm gonna go ahead and open my folder in GitHub, or sorry, I'm not GitHub. I'm gonna open my folder in Visual Studio Code, which is our code editor, and then I'm gonna pause for maybe a second or like a couple seconds just to let everyone get caught up and see if there are any questions that I didn't cover. So I'm gonna go ahead and open our empty folder. Remember, it should basically be empty. There's gonna be a hidden file in here called Git attributes. So if you see that, don't worry, that's expected. But for Mac people and Finder, this folder is gonna be empty. So I'm gonna go ahead and drag this into my editor. So I'm just gonna drag this, drag it here. And then I'm gonna get my environment set up. So I'm gonna put my browser on the left, and then I'm gonna put my code editor on the right. I'm gonna pause here really quick and see if there's any questions that I missed. Okay. All right, so no questions so far, so hopefully we're good. Do let me know if you do want me to slow down. It's not a problem. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and create our index.html file, right? You can either click new file here, or you can just click this little file icon up here next to the in the Explorer. Oh, how do you split your screen, please? Yeah, so I actually have a built-in software that lets me just swipe and do it. But if you don't have that, you can just do the good old dragging. So basically, just have your two windows, like your browser, and then your code editor next to each other, and then you can just shape it yourself if you don't have it. If you don't have the screen space to have both, feel free to just have them layered on top of each other. It's not a problem. For the purpose of the stream, I'm just going to do split screen to make it a little easier, but hopefully that works. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Poppy Bling. Yes, I always forget about the built-in Mac OS option, but you're talking about this, right? Oh, yeah. I always forget about that. Yeah, you can, if you're on Mac, you can hover this and then tile window left, tile window right. Nice. Yeah, Windows management isn't great on Mac OS. Yeah, for sure. I'm using a software that helps me with it. I can share that in the chat if anybody's curious. It's called Swish, I think, but I believe it costs money. Let's see, Swish. I'll just include a link to the one I'm using. But yeah, I think you can use Magnet too. I forgot if that was called. But I think I just used their free trial for a long time, honestly. I didn't pay for quite some time. All right. Cool. Yeah, no. Good. Thanks for the tool recommendations there. I really, I just picked the first one that was convenient for me, but it's good to know for Windows and other people as well. All right, cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and create our index.html file. So let's create our new file here. I'm gonna click the file icon, type in index.html, and then we have our blank HTML screen here. Once again, I'm gonna run through and just, build our basic HTML structure, which is the doc type at the top, the doc type declaration. Oops, I have to say doc type HTML, whoopsies. And then I'm gonna put our HTML tag. And then in the HTML tag, I'm gonna put our head tag. Maybe just like a title for now. You're free to title it whatever you want. It's not important for this demo. And then I'm gonna put a body. And then for now, I'm just gonna put like a header that says hello world. Very basic, right? It's basically just gonna be a blank website with hello world. So I'm gonna go ahead and save that. Let everyone, let me make my text bigger as well. Is there any way to paste like code in in Twitch and not make it look terrible? Let me see. Markdown in Twitch chat. Okay, maybe not in chat. All right, that's all good. I was just curious. I'm gonna go ahead and paste my code in the chat. If you do want to copy and paste it, it's gonna be very ugly because the formatting is gonna be gone. But if you prefer to just copy that, that might be a little easier. Okay, so this is our very basic HTML setup. Nothing fancy going on in here. Let's also now open our HTML page into our browser, so we have that left side by side, right? So we can quickly, as we make changes to our HTML, we can just go into our browser, refresh, and then see the changes live. So there's many ways to do that. My preferred way is usually just to open the file in Finder. So I think you can right-click on it, and then for Mac, of course, you have Reveal in Finder. For Windows, you have Reveal in the Windows Explorer or whatever. So go ahead and click that. And I'm gonna go ahead and just drag and drop the index.html file into the browser. You can drag as a new tab like I did here, like you drag it up here as a tab, or you can just drag it into the browser yourself, either or. But as you can see, we have our basic website here. All right, I'm gonna pause really quickly to make sure everyone is good here. Probably pause for like 10, 20 seconds. All right, cool. So hopefully we are good here. So now, this is stuff we've covered, just basics of HTML. Now we're gonna add Tailwind. So let's remember that we can go to the Tailwind CSS website. Let's go to Docs right here, Docs. And then the first thing that comes up is the installation section, right? So we're already there. And then I want us to, don't worry about all of this stuff. These are just other ways to load Tailwind. I mean, we're gonna go back to these once we start using like JavaScript frameworks. Like, some of you might have seen that Svelte, Next.js, React, these are all technologies that we're gonna cover later. For now, since we're still in just the fundamentals, let's go to this last tab that says Play CDN. And CDN, it stands for Content Delivery Network. I actually don't know. Content Delivery Network. Yeah, CDN stands for Content Delivery Network. Basically, this is just fancy talk for Tailwind just bundled all of their code, put it on a script, and you just paste this script into your HTML, and it will load the Tailwind framework. Okay. Cool. So hopefully we're all good here. I'm gonna also share the link to this these docs in the chat in case that's a little easier for you to access. Okay, so hopefully everyone's caught up here. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna highlight this script tag, the one that they've pointed out for us. We're going to highlight this, highlight that. So I'm going to Command C to copy. For Windows is Control C. So I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to go jump back into our HTML here. Under the title, actually it doesn't matter where, but best practice, usually you put this stuff under the title. I'm going to go ahead and paste that script. Okay, so to actually see if this works, we're going to add a class onto our HTML. And actually, we can just do something similar here. You can copy and paste their classes, but in this case, I encourage typing it out. It's good to build that muscle memory. So on this H1, I'm going to open it up. I want to put the class attribute equals text3xl. And we're going to break down what each of these means in a second. Text3xl. Well, I guess maybe it's just better to do it as we go. So text3xl is basically saying the text size is going to be extra large. It's basically like XXXL, like very, very large. And they just do 3XL as a way to shorten that. So this is very big text is another way to see it. And then we have font bold. Some might be able to figure this out, but font bold is basically, we're bolding the text, right? And then we have underline. So underline, as some might guess, we'll put an underline under our text. And just for fun, actually let's save this first and then check out our HTML. So I'm gonna go back to our HTML. Remember this white circle up here means we haven't saved the file. So we gotta save it first, so save it. And then I'm gonna go over to our browser and refresh. Yay! So as you can see, our text is big. Well, I guess it was already big. It's bold, even though it was already bold. But we know it's working because we can see the underline there. Also, the font changed slightly, if y'all noticed that. So there's a bunch of stuff going on here, but basically now we have Tailwind in our HTML. So let's test this even further. Let's make the text dark green. So to do that, we just go back into our class. I'm going to type text green. And remember, the last part of this is how dark you want it. If I do text green 100, it's going to be very light green. And it's probably not even going to be visible, right, on this white background. So let's go ahead and save this. Refresh the page. And yeah, you can barely see it. It's very, very light green. Let's make it dark green instead. So to make it the darkest green, we could do text green 900. So 900 is the darkest. Technically 50 is the lightest, but it ranges from 50 to 900, but mostly increments of 100. So we're gonna save that and refresh. And now we have a dark green. Oops, 1 second, my light is off. Can't see my face. Okay. Ah, my light. No. 1 second. Let me actually. I guess you don't need to see my face. It's okay. It got dark so quick here. But hopefully we're all good there. Is everyone good at this point? Just do a quick pulse check. You don't have to say anything if you are good. Just do let me know if you're not at this point so far. What the heck is wrong with my light? 1 second. Okay, that's a little better. All right, how are we doing? Okay, so it looks like we're all good so far. Cool. So we've just done the very basic test of Tailwind, right? We added some classes separated by spaces, and each of these classes equals to some CSS rules. So let's say we actually want to see what exactly does this mean? Text screen 900. Well, this is where we're going to get used to the workflow of going into the Tailwind documentation and understanding what each of these classes mean. So let's go into the Tailwind documentation. And there's a lot going on here, but let's first start with the colors, right? So you can go down, you don't have to worry about memorizing all of this now, but here in the customization section, we have a space called colors. And as you can see, these are all the built-in colors that they give you in Tailwind, right? It's a lot. It's definitely a lot, but you can see already how this is a lot more convenient than, in CSS, we either had to know the hex code off the bat, or we had to type in like the word sky blue. And even then the colors like wouldn't be that great looking. Tailwind already gives you a pretty nice palette of colors that you can choose from. Right, so we have, everything from rose to like yellow, amber, neutral, etc. And also we can see the color, the intensity or the darkness of the color here, right? 50 is the lightest. So in this case, if you do sky 50 as the color, it's going to give you the hex code of F0, F9, FF. And then if you go up to 900, it gives you like 0C, 4A, 6E, right? So something much darker. Okay, so let's address some questions here. So say I wanted to change the BG color of the body. Would I just add the class to it and declare color? Yeah, let's go ahead and do that as well. So let's say we want to change the whole body CSS, right? Let's say, let me go back to our website. So right now our website has a white background by default. Let's say we want to give it like a, I don't know, dark green background. Let's make our background dark green, and let's make our text light green. So let's try that really quick. So we could just go into the body tag. This is only if you want to style the whole body, right? So we can just type in class equals BG. So BG is how we do background. BG dash green. And we said dark green, right? So we could do BG green 900. Okay, and then before we save, let's go and change our text to be very light green. We can do text green 100. So let's save this. And then I'm going to go to my HTML, refresh. Yay. Super easy, right? We didn't leave our HTML. We haven't even created a CSS file. It just allows us to style our website in almost any way we want, just with these classes. But as I said, guys, the con is that if you have a really complex website, your HTML is going to get really messy really quickly. So I didn't include this in the slides, and I really should. Actually, I'll probably go back and add it. But there are some tools we can add here in VS Code. And I'll encourage you to check it out for your own editor if you're not using VS Code. But at least in VS Code, we can install some Tailwind extensions that will help us a little bit here. So there's many ways to install extensions in VS Code. What I like to do is use the Command P, or sorry, Command Shift P. Yeah, Command Shift P. I don't know how to do this on Windows. Maybe Control Shift P. Someone let me know if that's right or wrong. Control Shift P, Command Shift P, Control Shift P. It's basically going to give you the a command prompt in VS Code, and this is where you can just quickly like type in extensions, and there should be a command that shows up in the list that says install extensions. Okay, so people have confirmed that Control Shift P works. Cool. Basically, in the future, Control Shift P is just like, if you want to install extensions, uninstall them, change VS Code settings, it just gives you like a really quick way to find that, because I do not have that stuff memorized, like where to go to get that. So in this case, since we want to install an extension, we can just type in extensions, and it gives us a list of commands that's related to extensions. So I'm going to go down and click the install extensions. And then it's going to pop up this little extensions list. And then in the search extensions, just go ahead and type in Tailwind. And then I'm going to make this a little bigger here. So there's a couple of, there's a lot, not more than a couple, there's a lot of extensions here. The two I would like, or I would recommend you download for today, if you can, are IntelliSense. So IntelliSense basically auto-completes your classes. So basically, once you start typing text dash, it'll give you all the possibilities that will come next, right? Really useful, especially when you're starting out and you don't have all the classes memorized. So I highly recommend installing that. So let's add that to our VS Code, installing. And then the second one is the docs. It allows you to hover over classes, I think. Oh, actually, no, this is a different one. I guess this one allows you to just jump to the docs really quick. You know what? Scratch that. There's only actually one you need, and that's IntelliSense. You're welcome to check out the docs one, but I realized like this is actually not the one I use. The IntelliSense is really the main one. Docs is if you really want a quick way to open up the docs, but the IntelliSense is the main one here. Okay. How are we doing on time? Okay, we're decent on time. Okay, so let's go ahead and we installed it. Let's go ahead and test the IntelliSense. So let's say I wanted to, so this text right now is, on the left, right? And let's say I wanted to center it in the middle of the page. Oh, it doesn't work if you're using Play CDN. No, I didn't know that. You're right. Never mind. Oh, that's why. Okay, that's okay. I would just install it for today, but we will cover how to set up that config in a future lesson. But good call out there. I assumed that it was gonna work for all cases, but it looks like it doesn't work for that play here. That's okay. We'll get it enabled once we set up our config. But really good call out there. I was wondering why it wasn't working. Okay. So we basically just went over the very basics of Tailwind, right? And this is a similar theme to what we're talking about with HTML, CSS. The point of today, guys, is not to memorize all of these classes and memorize all of these little details. It's just to get comfortable with, well, one, how to add Tailwind CSS to your HTML. And just like how we did with HTML, CSS, sometimes the best way to learn something brand new is to take components, like something, a template basically that someone else made, add it to our website, and then just by adding it and seeing what it produces, we start to put together the pieces a lot faster. So, and this is related to the homework, because the homework today is to build your own website using Tailwind. And specifically, I want you to build it with components. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know you can create it in the project directory. Let's cover that a little bit more next week, or not next week, but like in the next session. But that was a good call out. We could just create a config file, which would allow the IntelliSense to work. But I think we can still make it through the rest of the day, I think, even without the IntelliSense. But that's a good note there. I did not know that. Okay, so we basically just did the basics of CSS or Tailwind. Now let's look at some Tailwind components. So there are two main websites I use for Tailwind components. One is Tailwind UI. And Tailwind UI has good free components, but honestly, most of their good components are paid, and it's kind of expensive. It's like $300, which is that's kind of a lot for components. But as you go forward, I will say that paying this amount was probably one of the best investments I made, just because I make so many projects with Tailwind that it's probably saved me thousands of hours at this point. So highly recommend if you do, not now, but like if you do go further and you do end up using Tailwind a lot, this $299, I'm telling you, is not a bad deal, even though it seems expensive because it just saves you so much time. But that doesn't matter because we're just gonna be using the free components. So I'll go ahead and send the link in the chat. So someone asks, so if you have a complex website you want to make, will Tailwind not be that good to use? I would actually argue the opposite. I actually think Tailwind is a lot better than Bootstrap, Material, some of those alternatives we're talking about. It's actually best if you are doing a complex website because it's so flexible. So yeah, I of course this is an opinion thing, but I do think Tailwind was literally made to build complex websites really fast. It's €249 for you. No way. Okay, pro tip: I guess you could do a VPN and then get a little discount there. That's kind of cool. So this is the one component. This is the one component website I use, Tailwind UI components. This was made by the makers of Tailwind, so it's a lot of the styling is very similar to what we saw on Tailwind site. The other one I like to show you is called Tailwind Toolbox. I'll post these in the chat as well, but if you just Google Tailwind Toolbox, oops, I spelled that wrong. I said Tailwind Tailwind Toolbox. Yeah. And this just gives you a huge list of free templates as well, right? So you can see you have like a profile card template, a landing page template, all that stuff. Some nice looking websites too, right? Like if we click on this one, it's like decent looking, etc. But I personally just like the style of Tailwind UI templates, even though there's far less of them for free. So go ahead and we'll just start with Tailwind UI. But once again, this same like flow applies to whatever Tailwind component library you use. I'm gonna go ahead and click on their components, and I'm gonna scroll down. And let's put together a landing page really quick, right? So this is just, we're going to be copy and pasting code, but the homework is going to involve like copy and pasting these components, but also modifying them, right? Modifying them to fit your liking. And just doing that exercise will help you see what like production and like best practice for Tailwind looks like. So let's go ahead and start our website off with a hero section. So hero sections kind of look like this, right? It's just, just like big text, some littler text, and some buttons, right? Maybe you have a nice image and you have the company logo, right? This is basically the first thing you see when you see a website, which in marketing landing page world, we call it the hero. I don't know actually why they call it the hero. I guess it's like the hero of the story, but it was always interesting to me that they decided on the name hero. Anywho, as you can see, you can scroll down and there's a lot of options, but I believe we only get one for free. I think if you click get the code on any of these, you have to pay. Yeah, it makes you go pay, so that kind of stinks. But that's okay, because we're just gonna make use of the free one that they give us. So this is the preview of what the component looks like, right? It looks pretty spiffy. We're gonna go ahead and click code, the code tab right here. And you get this big block of HTML, kind of intimidating. Once again, we are going to just copy and paste and then modify first, and that will help us understand Tailwind as a whole faster. So basically click on code. Let's copy this snippet. And then I'm going to, first in my HTML, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this code that I wrote. So I'm going to delete everything in my body and get rid of that class. I'm going to go ahead and just paste this into my HTML. So it's very long, right? Very long, very unwieldy. Like this is kind of what I was talking about with the flaws of Tailwind, right? It's just a lot that's going on. But as you start to read through the code and look at the output, it'll start to make a lot more sense, right? But first, let's go ahead and just paste this in here and save it. And then I'm going to go back to our website and I'm going to refresh. And as you can see, it looks pretty much exactly like the preview, right? Looks pretty good, and we can change this to be our own text. We can change this to be our own image. We can change the colors, all that. For example, pro tip, if you really want to quickly change all the colors, the default colors for all the Tailwind components is indigo. So if you want to change the word indigo and basically change all the colors to be, say, green, what we can do is do Command F in VS Code. And this is find, right? Very similar to kind of how it is in Microsoft Word. We're going to use a find and replace here. So you can do find and replace by doing Command F and then clicking this little caret drop down, which will open the replace field. So we're going to find the word indigo, right? As you can see, indigo shows up 13 times because the logo is indigo, the login link is indigo, the buttons are indigo, so forth, right? And let's say we want to change this to just lime green. And if you want a list of all the colors, you can just go back to this colors page and you can select literally any of these colors, right? Any of these colors that they give here. Let's spice it up a bit. Instead of just using green, let's use emerald. So I'm going to replace indigo with the word emerald. This button will only replace individual ones, so you'll have to click this 13 times to replace all of them. Or if you're lazy like me and we want to change all the colors, you can just do replace all. So this button. So I'm going to click this and it's going to replace all the times where it says indigo with the word emerald. I'm going to save this. I'm going to go to our website. I'm going to refresh. And voila. All of a sudden we have our own emerald themed website, right? Pretty nifty, pretty nice. Now I'm going to show you something even cooler with and honestly, one of the major advantages of using Tailwind. So I'm going to go ahead and make this website look like a mobile website, right? So this is what our website looks like on computer, right? On desktop. But what if someone on mobile visits our website? What's that going to look like? Well, we can preview it by opening our DevTools, right? By right-clicking the page and clicking Inspect. And then you want to click on this icon right here. But wait, we forgot to add our meta tag. Remember that meta tag, the viewport tag, without it, basically our website, it just looks like this on mobile. It's just a very squished version of our desktop website. So that's not great, right? So we have to remember that whenever we make a website, we also have to add this tag in the head, which is, it's basically a meta tag, but you can also call it the meta viewport tag. And this, once again, this is not something I have memorized. This is just generally something I copy and paste, but I believe it looks something like this. Actually, you know what? I'm not gonna embarrass myself. I'm gonna look it up. Meta viewport tag. Okay, yeah. So meta viewport tag, we get this tag. I'm gonna also drop it in the chat. Basically, yeah, you want, this tag will give you a mobile optimized website, which is what we want, right? 60% of website visits are mobile. So I'm gonna copy this. Oh, thank you, Poppy. Poppy already got it in the chat. And feel free to just drop that in your head. Let's save that. Let's go back to our website. Let's refresh. And whoa, pretty nifty, right? Unfortunately, we don't have JavaScript set up, so this menu is kind of blocking our way. But you know, without the menu, it looks a lot better, right? It looks a lot more mobile friendly. But once again, we can't really close this menu right now because we haven't got the JavaScript yet. But you know, basically it's much more responsive now on website. Let me see if I could hide this really quick manually, just to show you what it looks like without it. Where did it go? Oopsies, that didn't work. Yeah, that's okay. I'm too lazy to figure it out. But basically, on mobile, it looks a lot niftier, right? Maybe if we go to the preview here, oh yeah, in the Tailwind UI components, we can just drag at this little thing. There we go. That's a little better, right? Now we can see, you know, on mobile viewports like this, looks pretty good still, right? And even on tablets, you know, it looks decent, and then all the way to desktop. So it's a lot easier to create responsive websites, in my opinion, with Tailwind. It's just a lot of work to have to do all of that in CSS. So to me, that was one of the big advantages of using Tailwind over regular CSS. There's a lot going on here. I'm not gonna cover any more of this because, you know, this is where we're gonna go into the homework, and the homework is basically doing this, just kind of putting together your own website, right? Today we kind of stopped after the hero section, but you know, if you were to continue, you could go to all the components, add a feature section, you know, like, so we just copy this code, just paste it under our header or hero, save that. You know, we have this. Once again, our colors are mismatched, but the point is, yeah, for our homework, I want you to do a very similar thing that we did today, which is basically just cobble together components and start to play around with it, right? Today, the goal is not to deeply understand Tailwind. Tailwind is not super easy, but the point is more to just get your hands dirty with it. And just by doing that, you'll start to pick up a lot of how Tailwind's doing things. There's gonna be a lot of things in here that are confusing, but once again, I want your first reflex to be like, oh, I don't know what this means. Like absolute, right? What does this mean? I want you to go into the docs. Well, you could just do a quick search, absolute. And you can quickly see kind of, yeah, they basically tell you what each of these classes mean, right? And the CSS that's corresponding. So the class absolute gives you these CSS properties, right? So that's how I want you to get used to doing this homework assignment. Cool. I'm gonna go back to the slides now. Okay, so yeah, I want you to use the Tailwind components, and you don't have to use Tailwind UI like we did today. If you want to use Tailwind Toolbox, that's cool too. I want you, and it doesn't matter the website you create, but I want you to create and publish a website with GitHub pages, similar to how we did last time. And so I included the links to these UI sites here. But honestly, if you just Google Tailwind components, you're welcome to use whatever you want, as long as it's free, right? I don't encourage paying for these at this step unless you really want to. So some examples of sites you can make for homework: you can make like a blog website, you can make a homepage, which is kind of what we're making in that example, or you can make another social profile or a link in bio page, right? The point of the homework is, once again, not to be an expert in Tailwind. It's more just to put together components, play around with it, make it your own, and that will start to give you a feel of how to do things in Tailwind. Okay, cool. So I think that's basically it for the main session today. Let's go ahead and do some Q&A for 10 minutes if anybody has any additional questions. If not, once again, yeah, you can use the exclamation mark slides command to get the slides. We also have the exclamation mark feedback command if you do want to give anonymous feedback on the session. Feedback is really important to us. Honestly, I feel like it's been super helpful seeing the responses to that form. It just gives me an idea of, what can I improve for next time? What, didn't quite hit the mark of this session. It lets the whole class basically benefit if we get feedback. And, it's anonymous, so there's no way I'm gonna be able to figure out who's submitting what. So that's another plus. Cool. Thank you all. Yeah. Really appreciate all the subscriptions as well. I was definitely not expecting to get that many off the bat. So really, really appreciate that. But yeah, hopefully you guys got a pretty good grasp of the basics of Tailwind. Once again, we're going to be continuously working with Tailwind. This is just a quick intro. And I do think the more you spend with Tailwind, you're not going to like it that much in the beginning because, it can get pretty unwieldy. But over time, I trust that you'll start to see the convenience and the reason why I'm introducing it so early. Awesome. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Yeah. Let me also scroll through the chat. Yes, definitely intimidating. It's definitely intimidating, especially all that text, right? It's a lot. But, the homework today or the homework next week, not this week, but the homework is just very, just play around with it. Just see how these components are put together. You don't have to, of course, memorize all this stuff, but, just getting into the habit of looking things up in the Tailwind documentation. I mean, that's how I do my CSS these days, right? I don't have, there's far too much in here to have memorized, but you'll start to build a habit of knowing what the most important classes are. Yeah, for sure. So someone asked, can you help me out with resizing an image on the link in bio website? Currently too big on iPhone view. Yeah, definitely. Do you mind sending me a link to your GitHub? That's probably the easiest way for me to dive into that. And then we can talk about that offline if that works. Yeah, I find it hard, or I'm trying to figure out a better way to help people with projects during Twitch, but I find that Discord and doing that asynchronously might be a little bit better. So feel free to DM me on Twitch or Discord if you're in it. If it's on GitHub, then that works. If you just want to copy and paste your code into Discord or Twitch, that works as well. But yeah, let me know if that works for you, but I can totally help out with that. Yeah, Control F and VS Code. Yes, I saved so much time with that Control F. I actually took me a long time to realize there was the find and replace. I didn't actually know how to do it, but yeah, it's quite clutch. But yeah, Tailwind is smooth. I definitely like it a lot. It's it looks like it's a professional website, even though really all we did here was just copy and paste stuff. But you can customize it a lot. So someone asked, let me answer this question first. Is Tailwind the same as Bootstrap? They're the same, as in they accomplish very similar goals. Both Tailwind and Bootstrap solve the problem of having to write all the CSS yourself. So they're similar in that regard, but they take very different approaches. Bootstrap basically gives you, if we're to do the same thing we did today in Bootstrap, Bootstrap basically just gives you pre-made components. So they give you all of this in 1 to 2 lines of code, right? Which is nice if you want to move fast, but it's not as flexible, right? It's a little harder to customize styling, padding. For example, let's say you wanted these input forms to be I don't know, taller or have more vertical spacing. You can do that in Bootstrap. It's just not really designed for that as well. So Tailwind I see as a far more flexible version of Bootstrap, I guess is how I think about it. So someone asked, can you use tabs in VS Code to isolate the different sections of code while being in the same index file? That's a really good question. I think you can, but let's see. Open to the side. Oh, you can. Okay, so I guess the way you do that is you can right click the file. You can do open to the side, which will open a new tab, right? Well, I guess it's not really it's not, it's a separate section, but it is a new tab. And here, let me make this a little bigger. So you basically, I have the top of my HTML document here, And in my second HTML document, I can scroll to the bottom. And yeah, it lets me like see different parts of the page that way. So hopefully that helps. Basically, tabs isn't technically your solution here, but it's the panel. Like you want to open it into the side panel. So someone says it would be cool to see voice channels, VC channels, and Discord for co-working. Yeah, definitely. I think I still need to figure out like how to do that. For now, I created a Discord, like I created like a voice channel, like general chat, but I haven't like organized anything around like, you know, when people hop into that. So for now, that's kind of like a, you know, do it at your own pace type thing. But as we get into the more like advanced projects, I do want to encourage more like group collaboration. So I think that's when we'll make a lot more of the voice chats. So you're welcome to use the voice chats as you want. It's just I don't currently have a lot of structure built around it right now, but would be open to suggestions, of course. So someone asked, so Tailwind is a more advanced Bootstrap. Yeah, I guess in very simple terms, yes, you can think of Tailwind as a more advanced version of Bootstrap. To be specific, it's a more flexible, more advanced, and this is subjective, but I think it's also a better looking version of Bootstrap, or less generic. So that's kind of how I see the two. But you're welcome to play around with Bootstrap as well, because you know I do know there's a lot of interest in Bootstrap, but just you know everything we learn here is designed to make our portfolio really stand out to recruiters, so we can get really nice jobs. And I just find that Bootstrap is so old and has been used so much that it actually gives you an advantage if you use like Tailwind components to make your site look a little bit more interesting. So someone says, I'm looking at the Tailwind code and I'm noticing a lot of tags over and over, like a lot of divs. Yeah, for sure. So I just to kind of give a visual example to what you're talking about something like this, right? We see a div within another div. I'll just say right now that how this HTML code looks is how like a lot of professional developers write code. The only reason, like there's many reasons they need to do that. Basically, each individual section of the page could be thought of as a separate div or a separate like section or whatever. So the exact reason, like it's going to depend on the use case, but generally like all the sites that we've built up so far are fairly simple, so we haven't had the need to put a bunch of divs in each other. But this look right here is how most real like professional HTML structures look like. So it's really, I don't really have a good answer here. Clearly, I'm kind of like going around in circles, but basically it just allows you to separate different parts of code, different parts of your HTML code easily. If it does get overwhelming, always remember that I encourage you to use this caret, this like a down caret on the side of your code editor to kind of shrink different sections so you can understand them a little better. But yeah, it's basically like if you have a complex website with a lot going on, you're probably going to have to put divs inside of each other. The exact reason why it's kind of tricky to say because it's basically like, you need to, it leads to a more complex structure, which is how a lot of HTML sites are. So hopefully that makes sense. But once again, I think another thing that's important to know about HTML is that like you can write HTML in so many different ways, right? There's no like, sometimes it's hard for me to give a reason why HTML is done a certain way besides like best practice, right? Which seems like a cop-out reason. I'm basically just saying, oh, I recommend doing it just because that's how the pros do it or that's how I do it. But for HTML, it's kind of true just because there's so many different ways to do things in HTML. Actually, just all code, right? HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Python, Rust, Go, like all the languages, there's like so many different ways to do things. And oftentimes like for example, like recruiters or like, what makes your code good is following these best practices. And because, your code is going to be read by other developers, right? So the more familiar you make it, the better code quality you'll have. So yes, sorry, not a super direct answer here, but basically, if you have a more complex HTML structure, right, like the site we're building, they're going to look like this. So someone said it's kind of a bit more advanced, but semantic HTML helps with the div streets. Yeah. I guess semantic HTML is kind of a reason why they're structured like this. We didn't talk about too much about like semantic HTML, but yeah, that's kind of one way to think about it. It's like, these are just different sections of the page, right? Each div is just like a different little section. So
I have screen readers for
yeah.
disabled.
All right, cool. Let's see. Are there any more questions I missed? I'm gonna scroll through chat. Otherwise, yeah, we actually kind of finished on time today, ish. So that's a record for me. Scroll through chat. Oh, when will Playground launch? Yes, actually, I was planning to launch Playground. Actually, I'll post this in the Discord, but I think I'm ready to have people like just like try out the platform really quick. To me, in my opinion, like for the bootcamp, I think the best time to roll out the actual app is during the JavaScript part, right? Because as I mentioned, JavaScript is like the root is the more difficult part of learning all this, and that's why I wanted to have the app ready for that. But if you do want to just play around and just give feedback, I can give you access as early as like maybe tomorrow. I'm just like making sure like nothing breaks. But yeah, I'll post a call out in Discord for anybody that wants to like sign up and give it a quick try. But in terms of like for the people that are actively participating in a bootcamp, I plan to really roll out the app once we start hitting the JavaScript section, which will be like in a week or two, pretty soon. Yeah, no, for sure. We'd love to have you as a beta tester. I'm a little nervous because this is something I've been coding for, like I've been iterating on for a long time and haven't posted out. But yeah, that's awesome to hear. Thank you. Oh, also need to do a holiday schedule too because yeah, I know we have holidays coming up, so I will do that as well. So let's see. Someone said, "Do pro coders use Tailwind or Bootstrap, or are they made all from scratch?" That's a really good question. I think the best way to like so to quickly answer the question, yes, professional web developers use all sorts of tools, right? Actually, that's probably one of the problem with web development. Every pro has their own like preferred tool, and every company has their own preferred tools. So yes, there are huge companies like there are super successful startups, super large companies that use Bootstrap, Material Design, and UI, and Tailwind. Right? Tailwind is definitely something that's newer. So I doubt like Google or Facebook are like I doubt like a ton of teams there are using Tailwind just because they're so big. But for a lot of startups, like I think both of the startups I helped build and Playground, they're all using Tailwind, right? A lot of really fast growing startups now are starting to adopt Tailwind. So these are all like pro level technologies, if that makes sense. But in my honest opinion, I do feel like Tailwind is starting to like gain a lot of popularity with bigger companies just because it's a lot more scalable. That being said, there are companies that don't use Tailwind, Bootstrap, or any CSS framework. They just write everything in plain CSS. And people, pro CSS people might argue with me on this, but I think it's if you have a big company, it sometimes gets difficult to maintain so much CSS, right? If you're talking about hundreds of components, like hundreds of pages, like it just becomes a lot. Unless your team is just really organized, it's hard to scale out sometimes without using a framework. That being said, companies have done it. This is just like a general statement I'm making. But yeah, I can definitely get you guys access. I'm gonna finish up some final details tonight and then try to ship it out. Maybe I'll roll out a Tailwind module in the app, right? In the apps to have it ready, because that could also help with testing as well. But yeah, cool, y'all. I'm probably start wrapping up in like few minutes, but I can hang around for any other questions. Yeah, one quick question. So let's see. One of the components for Tailwind Toolbox uses the style sheet. Is this their version of Tailwind? Oh, great question. So I think they include the style. That is, it's not necessarily their version of Tailwind. It is like another. It's basically an alternative to this script tag that we put up there. The snippet that you posted, that's like the old way of doing Tailwind, right? Old as in like a couple months ago. That was Tailwind v2. I think Tailwind's now on v3, and I guess they have adopted this script. But short answer is they basically do the same thing. some things in between versions, like version 2 of version 3 of Tailwind, there are slight differences. So if you really want to be safe, I would just use the style sheet that they provided rather than using the script. But I mean, it should work if you use the script. It's just no guarantee because the new version might have included things that they didn't have in the version 2. So hopefully that makes sense. So Thomas asks, will Thursday be Tailwind focused? Yeah, great question. I think, to be honest, I think Thursday, I do want to spend more time with Tailwind. That being said, I trying to think like what's the next like logical addition here, because I don't think it takes a long time to master CSS. It takes time to master Tailwind. I don't want us to get too deep into those because I am confident that as we start to build more projects, you'll naturally pick that knowledge up. And once again, my goal is to get us into the JavaScript part as quickly as possible. So I don't know. Short answer is I haven't finalized yet. My initial thought was that Thursday would be more dedicated towards Git. So I know it's going to be a lot of context switching, but I'm thinking Thursday, if we just get a better idea of Git and do more real Git stuff, then on the Tuesday after that, I think we'll have everything we need to just start diving into JavaScript, right? So it's not, I don't want, the risk I think is I don't want us to feel like we're leaving Tailwind and Git half baked. I think my purpose is I want to introduce these things early so they're stewing in your mind. But the core of the course is revolving around JavaScript. And once we get into JavaScript, a lot of this stuff is going to start to piece together faster. But I'm open to feedback, of course. If you feel like you'd like to spend more time with Tailwind, I definitely want to hear your voice here and hear your thoughts. But that's just my thought process, right? I think today, just get the basics of Tailwind out there. You don't have to memorize all of CSS. You don't have to memorize all of Tailwind, but just you want to know how it works. Thursday, we introduce Git. We're not going to be masters of Git on one day, right? We're just getting the basics and understanding it better. And then on next week, once we do JavaScript and start to get into JavaScript frameworks, then all of this is going to come together a lot more cohesively. So hopefully that makes sense. So I am on Windows. The meta viewport code doesn't work for me. I tried it again and my site is still in the mobile view. Let me go ahead and debug that a little bit. So Windows, meta tag, HTML. What browser are you using? Just out of curiosity. Maybe that has something to do with it. Chrome. I'm not. Do you, if we're not able to debug that today, do you mind sending me a link to your code or a GitHub? Then I could just take a look offline. But just from an initial look, it should still work on Windows, especially if you're still using Chrome. I'll just paste the snippet one more time. It should. Let's see. I'll paste the snippet one more time, and you can just double check to make sure that syntax is correct. But if it's not, don't worry about it. Feel free to send me the code or your GitHub, on Discord or in a DM or something, and then I can take a look there. But as a first reaction, I'm not sure if Windows should affect that too much. It would only affect it if you were using IE or something like that, but you're using Chrome. So, but I'll take a look. I'm not sure why that could be. Okay, so someone asked, how many weeks is this bootcamp for? To be honest, I originally planned this to be 12 or so weeks, and I think it'll still take that many of the amount of time. But I think one thing about this course is I want to be flexible, right? I think it's going to be very rushed if we do cram everything in 12 weeks. But what I'm thinking is 12 weeks is going to just say 12 weeks, estimate 12 weeks is basically the time it'll take for us to go through foundations, which is HTML, CSS, JavaScript, front end, which is Svelte, React, that stuff, back end, which is Node, databases, all that stuff, and then our final module will basically be career stuff. So career focus will be understanding how to pass interviews, how to negotiate salary, pro tips for getting jobs. and like actually how to get like your dream job, like strategies for that. And then for the rest of it, like that's basically when the boot camp will end. But there's still the part afterwards, which is building your capstone, right? Because your what you have on your portfolio for anybody that's like breaking into web development, if you don't have a portfolio of projects, especially if you don't have like a computer science degree or just any degree at all, you'll need some impressive projects on your portfolio. And that's what the capstone part is going to be dedicated to, right? So 12 weeks, you learn all the skills you need. And then, after that, you guys go off on your own, either by yourself or in groups to put together your capstone projects. And of course, I'll still be around, but that's kind of like the end of the curriculum. So 12 weeks for maybe the core curriculum. And then after that, spend as much time as you need to kind of put together your projects. But of course, the community is always going to be here as a means of support and like helping people with projects. But that's kind of like what I have in the back of my mind. Since I've never run a boot camp like this, that's why all my answers are so like, I don't know, because, I am trying to feel it out and also getting feedback from people, right? If I cover a unit and people feel like the unit like doesn't make sense or they want more time to it, then it's going to be a little extended, right? So loosely saying that 12 weeks is the estimated timeline for the main curriculum. Okay, cool. You will keep the VODs. Yes, I do keep the VODs on the channel. Another place to find them is on my YouTube. I'm still kind of a little... Oh yeah, my cat is very angry. She's always gets angry during streams. You can also do ! YouTube to get the link to my YouTube. I am like 2 lessons behind on my YouTube. They're uploading right now. It's just taking a while. But I do have like some old lessons on Twitch, YouTube. But if you want to find one place for all of them, do check out the Notion. So I do ! Notion. This Notion is basically like the homepage for the curriculum. That's where you can find all the homework, all the past recordings, all the slides, all the videos, all that should be in there. And I think that's updated. Let me double check. Yes, it is updated for today. Cool. Oopsies. All right. Yeah, no problem. No problem. Yeah, I need to do a better job of like organizing all my videos and stuff, but the Notion should be the most updated place. And I think now that we're a Twitch affiliate, apparently our videos don't get deleted after 7 days, so that's good. But it does mean that we're missing like the first 3 or 4 on, well, no, we're missing the first 3 sessions on Twitch, but those aren't on YouTube. All right, y'all. I probably am going to head off. Maybe like 1 more minute, just catch any more questions. I do have to go vote. If you're in America, go ahead and do that as well. But yeah, I need to make my way over to the polling centers. Yes, no worries. Sorry, one more question. Regular CSS will overwrite Tailwind. That's a tricky question to answer because it's like you can have regular CSS overwrite Tailwind. Like, yeah, I'm like hesitant here. Basically, if you put a link to your CSS tag under where you have Tailwind loaded, yes, your CSS rules will overwrite Tailwind. But if you have the Tailwind styles loaded, like put under your CSS, then Tailwind will overwrite your CSS. So the order matters here is basically what I'm saying. So yes, the answer is regular CSS will overwrite Tailwind as long as you put the link to the script tag, or sorry, the link to the CSS tag under Tailwind. All right. Yeah, thank you all. And yeah, feel free for the people that I said to DM me like your code, definitely, yeah, I'll just Discord's probably the easiest way, but I'm also on Twitch and other things as well. But yeah, just Discord probably is the easiest. And yeah, if you do have a link to your GitHub, that's definitely preferred. It makes it a lot easier for me to go in. But if you just want to copy and paste your code, that works too. All right, no worries, everyone. Yeah, thank you all. I'll catch y'all later. Thanks for coming today. All right, take care. Bye. Office hours. Yes, office hours. I do want to do more office hours. This week has been a little bit crazy. It's like fundraising season, and I'm trying to get on all the fundraising meetings I can before all the investors go on Thanksgiving break. But yes, I will try to target a office hours today. Maybe I think Friday is usually when I do it. But usually I kind of announce those prompt twos. But I'll try to get into the habit of doing at least one per week if that works. All right, take care, y'all. Have a good night. Oops. All right, take care. Bye.